Hello again everyone. In today's video we're going to take a look at the £5 auction 486 again and see if we can give it a bit more performance. As a reminder, this is a PC that I picked up on an independent auction for just £5 and it cleaned up quite nicely in the end, just needing a bit of dusting and some impromptu indoor retro brighting in order to get it looking its best. Today we're going to look at improving its performance as well as a couple of practical upgrades, so with that said, let's crack on. First thing we're going to do is upgrade the CPU. This machine came to me with a 486DX33 processor, but to get the best out of those early 90s games, we're going to upgrade that to a 486DX2 clocked at 66 MHz. That's the fastest CPU that this motherboard supports, at least according to the manual, and on paper we're literally doubling the processing speed of this machine, so hopefully that will translate to some impressive gains when we come to testing later. Coupled with that, we're going to upgrade the RAM from the 8MB that the machine came with, doubling it just like the CPU speed to a total of 16MB. To do that, I had several options. The manual specified that we could use a number of combinations to get to 16MB, but to keep things simple, we're going to use two random sticks of 8MB 72-pin RAM. We are also upgrading the graphics card in this machine from the original ISA card from Diamond Flower to this VLB card from Trident. Hopefully the use of that VESA local bus will give us a little bit extra performance in some of the more graphically demanding games planned for this machine. Lastly on the performance side, or actually I guess we're edging into practical upgrades, we're adding a CD-ROM drive in place of the 5¼ floppy drive. I only actually own a couple of programs on 5¼ disk, so there's really no point in keeping the drive in this build. I'd get much better use out of a CD-ROM drive. This Hitachi drive is a little bit new for the system really, being a 32-speed drive built in 1999, but it's the only drive I've got at the moment which has the plain look at the front that this machine cries out for, and I think that grey bezel will look a lot better in the case when compared to a traditional cream or beige drive. Unfortunately, the interface card and or BIOS of this machine doesn't support ATAPI devices, so I need to find another way to connect the CD drive to this system. Well, I say find. I've already found the solution, but I'm not exactly happy about it. You see, it's not uncommon for BIOSes from this era to not support CD-ROM drives. In fact, in the early 90s, it was much more common to connect your CD drive to your sound card of all things. You can see the various connections for this on the Aztec card I installed in the system in the last video. This card has connectors for Sony, Panasonic and Mitsumi type CD-ROM drives, but annoyingly not the typical IDE standard that eventually did away with all of these other differing standards. I do have another Aztec card which on paper supports IDE CD-ROM drives, but as you can see, for whatever reason this particular board doesn't have the header soldered on, so I can't use that either. In fact, the only card I do have which supports an IDE CD-ROM drive is an altogether different beast. Just look at the state of this. This card came to me a couple of years ago in a job lot and it's sat patiently in my spares bin since then waiting for a valid use. It's a weird looking card with ports on the back for a joystick and or MIDI interface, along with traditional 3.5mm jacks for audio, and an RJ11 telephone connector. This is the Creative Labs Phone Blaster, a combined sound card and 28.8 kilobit per second modem from 1995. It's essentially a Sound Blaster 16, albeit using the later Vibra chip which consolidated many of the original 16 sound chips into one mega chip here. It wasn't a particularly well regarded range, seen by many as a budget alternative to an original Sound Blaster 16, but this original Vibra 16S based model does at least still contain an original Yamaha OPL3 chip for proper FM synthesis, and crucially it also contains an IDE channel to support our CD-ROM drive. It's not a plug and play card either, which is good actually because our PC's BIOS doesn't support it. instead needing to be configured via these jumpers here. And a small bank down here lets us choose the IRQ numbers for the modem and that IDE interface to ensure it doesn't clash with any other devices in the system. It's a shame I'm having to remove the Aztec card, as I really do like the way it sounds, but this should sound more or less the same, as it has the same OPL3 chip, and it really is a necessary evil if we want that CD-ROM drive. Lastly, I'm also adding this compact flash to IDE adapter in place of the original 85MB hard disk. These adapters allow you to use old compact flash cards that you used to find in digital cameras as a hard disk for your retro PC. And this one can be mounted in a spare expansion slot so that you can easily change the cards over for trying out different builds or for transferring files to and from another PC. Actually, now that I put it all together, that's quite a lot of stuff we're putting into this machine. Right, let's get on with it. So that's all looking, well, more or less the same really, isn't it? Oh, just change that. Perfect. Let's see if it works. Well, that's a good start. The system has counted up to 60 megabytes of RAM. Later on in the post, we can see that the processor is now recognised at 66 MHz, which is awesome. I was expecting to have to change a whole bunch of jumper settings, but actually, according to the manual, the only one that actually needed changing was the bus speed for the VLB slots. Checking out the BIOS, it looks like the 256 MB CF card that I'm using has been recognised, and clearly the new display adapter is also working. Awesome. Let's get DOS installed. I've no idea why this machine sometimes displays things in monochrome. It did the same thing with the old graphics card as well, so I'm assuming that it's something to do with the video mode set by the BIOS. But once in a game it works just fine, so I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm using Phil's DOS menu for this machine, as it'll largely be used for DOS games, some of which will need extended memory, others expanded, some with CD support, etc. So using this menu is a great way of getting compatibility with a variety of different titles without having to make a buttload of boot disks. I've linked it below if you want to check it out for yourself. I highly recommend you do. Choosing one of the options with CD-ROM support, you can see that the CD drive is recognised, and yep, seems to be working with no issues there. Let's throw some CDs in and see how it performs.
answer she ain't get open. The door is locked.
I guess our host wants us to fend for ourselves.
Oh, I've tasted better fare.
At least he left his regrets.
I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
So that is an overwhelming success in my book. Not only have we now got a CD-ROM drive to play all those old FMV and point-and-click games that we know and love, but games in general run so much smoother with the faster processor and extra RAM, not to mention that VLB graphics card. Outwardly, it's much the same machine, other than a few subtle differences, but it's now a different beast entirely, and so flexible given that I can easily swap out the CF cards on this machine without so much as a screwdriver. It's a much more usable machine for me, and I think it's going to be featuring in at least a couple more videos in the coming months. In fact, believe it or not, this machine now meets the minimum specifications for the original release of Windows 98. So it might be a treat to see how well, or not, that runs on this machine. I might also finally get around to playing with this old copy of IBM OS2 that's been sat on my shelf for a couple of years now, and has been teased several times in my other videos. If these sound like things that might interest you, then please feel free to hit that subscribe button. And if you wouldn't mind clicking the like button too, I'd really appreciate it. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.